Great to see you again, or at least have you see us. I've got David Cheatham, who's our training practitioner, educator, executive coach of Transform Communications, and myself, Jason Marsdale of Brown. David and I are just chatting about a variety of things tied to change management over the last couple of months here. And today we were saying, hey, it would be great to talk about how Goodwill is the currency of change management and kind of dive into that to give some people some added insight on this topic. And David, the floor is yours.
All right, Jason, thanks. It's always great to be here with you. Yeah, we wrapped up our last conversation with that phrase. Goodwill is the currency of change management, and particularly leading change, and that's something that you're not going to find in the literature. That goodwill is more of a term that we associate with public relations and some types of advertising, such as institutional advertising. Um, but, well, I should say, and related to that are concepts like employee satisfaction, ESAT, and customer satisfaction, CSAT. I would throw in something that's typically, again, not associated with change management, but should be, and that is the Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score, for those who are not in marketing as a discipline, may not be familiar with it, but you have taken it for, and that is variations on the theme of would you recommend us to someone else? That can take the form of would you recommend us? Would you do this again yourself? Would you recommend us to somebody else? But it's worded along those lines, and you have a 10-point scale, and so it's a scale of 0 is less likely, 10 is most likely. So the higher score you get on the Net Promoter Score means that you have become a promoter, a champion, an advocate of that brand, of that experience, to the point where you will probably use it again and recommend it. And of course, the lower the score shows, not only you're not going to promote it, but you may actually have a negative comment. And research does show, the literature does show that consumers, not just consumers, people in general, are 10 times more likely to share a negative experience with an organization, 10 times, as a positive one. And anyone who's run an event or who monitors social media for an organization sees this. And
Yep.
and it's intuitive. When people don't like something, they're more likely to discuss it. Now, is that fair to the organization and the marketers? In a way, no, because that shows you because a minority of right, Jason.
Sure.
But that is human nature, and it typically takes a really tremendously positive experience for somebody to come out and own up to that. What they'll do is they'll do all the good stuff, but they won't necessarily be reflected in their comments. So I want, for change management, I think the headline for today is to take some concepts from the world of marketing, advertising, public relations, and transfer those over to change management because they are applicable. In fact, they probably are more authentic than some other measures we have. And so we talk about goodwill. Okay, well, goodwill is the umbrella for me of all those things. We've talked earlier about trust and trust building and the lack of it. We've asked why employees are the last to know. We've given examples where leaders failed in this, failed miserably sometimes, right?
Yep.
And again, intuitively, when we see this examples of leaders making these mistakes, I don't think anybody looks at those tapes and says, I don't understand why people are upset about this. I've never heard anybody admit that to me. So we know instinctively what we should do, but in the heat of the moment, which is also a theme for our conversations, in the heat of the moment, this doesn't happen. We get tied up in the non-emotional aspect. So here, goodwill is reinforcing the emotional connection, that relationship, which is part of the business case for the change, but it supplements the numbers. It supplements those metrics. So this idea, and why is it the currency? Why is goodwill the currency? Because like any other currency, if you hold up a dollar bill, it says for all debts, public and private. And this is what the good. So hold up any bill, and it'll say this. Uh, and and this is what goodwill does. Goodwill can be gained, and it can be given away, and it can be taken away.
Sure.
Uh, if you do the change management properly, lead it properly, and we've been talking about it now for several weeks, then you are gaining. You're gaining. We talk about political capital, and when are we going to use it, and so forth. Well, you're going to spend political capital and waste political capital if you don't do it right. But the good news is you can save it up, you can gain it, you can invest in it, so that when those choppy times come, like we talked about earlier, balancing the good and bad news you share with people. If you only share good news because you're afraid of sharing bad news, when there is some bad news, it's going to be taken out of context and imbalanced. People are going to say, wow, I thought everything was wonderful. Well, it turns out it
Right.
was not always wonderful. It just leaders were afraid to go there. And so the impact is much worse and much more profound. And again, that political capital, that goodwill currency, suddenly starts to leak away. And
Absolutely.
and just when you need it the most, which is to rally people, uh, you're empty. The coffers are empty. So that's really the headline for today. Think about change management and change leadership in the sense of goodwill. How do you generate goodwill, maintain the goodwill, extend the goodwill, and how do you measure the goodwill? Because it's not an amorphous thing.
Yeah, I think the measurement's a really strong point to make because so many things that we do, at least that I've seen over the years, a lot of it's been based on feelings and and assumptions almost. And it's funny. Some people will become married like, oh, we've got to do this. This is really important. We've got customers that ask for this. We have employees that ask for it. And you look at the actual data and you say, you know what, like we actually, most people are grabbing the small cup of coffee. They're not grabbing a large cup of coffee. And we think in our mind that we've got to have both sizes. We can just have one size, something as stupid as that. But, it's funny that people have a different perception. So it's great to have the ability to point to whether it be the NAP score or some other metric that you can look at and say, hey, is this really what we think it is?
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, that's great. From a goodwill standpoint, like, what are some ideas that come to mind that you could share with the folks that might be watching this, and to create some ideas of what that really is, what kind of goodwill examples we can showcase in just a few words.
Yeah. Exactly. So again, this will connect some dots from the previous conversations, bringing in that change advisory group of people who are facing the customer, so that you can hear
Mhm.
their voice, so whatever the decision that leadership ultimately makes, you have frontline folks, ideally customer facing folks, helping to make that choice. And again, as adults, we know that our we don't always get our number one choice, but if we're given input as adults, we then give the benefit of the doubt to the people who ultimately have to make that choice and have that responsibility. We talked about narrative and the power of storytelling, bringing in employee stories and sharing those, not just the origin stories of the company, which is great. We talked about LL Bean and many examples, but just that day to day. I had a great customer experience yesterday, and ask yourself, who is capturing that? Is HR going to do this? Is the comms function going to do it? Is there who is going to capture that success story and share it and populate it around? Again, that's goodwill. That's saying we care about you. We celebrate that victory. And again, if next week we have to restructure things because the numbers don't work out, that has nothing to do with the fact and shouldn't diminish all those good stories. But if the stories just stay in that one little office, then no value. So, and in fact, it may work against you, because that employee might say, well, I just had this great experience, but you're telling me that we're going to change our relationship with that customer who really loves me.
Yeah, it's always interesting too. I feel like by having the goodwill and the exchange of the stories and sharing of these, you're also creating an added sense of accountability and responsibility that may not have previously existed, because it's like, well, who's really going to see this? Who's really going to care? You know, and it really falls back on the individual as to whether or not they care in their hearts to do this. So I think by by having these larger format conversations and tying it to other things, people can see clearly or see more clear uh, what their efforts are going to do to impact the company overall. And so, being able to have your name mentioned that you've been doing something right or being the example really, is another way I see like from a reward standpoint to recognize somebody. And we just had this the other day, just talking to a few of the team members. Hey, we're watching, we've been seeing what you've been doing. Great work. Please keep it up. Other employees are seeing those conversations happening. And, no, it's not a change of pay. It's a change in perspective.
Well
It's,
said. I love the
yeah.
alliteration.
Yeah, and it gives us the opportunity to, just give people the recognition that, it doesn't cost us anything to do. It just takes that extra moment to really recognize it for what it is and hopefully reinforce the good behavior. So
That's
yeah,
well,
this is
exactly. And the
some
book
good
we talked
some
about
good
the other
meat.
day, yeah, the thousands of ways to recognize, and you said it just right, Jason, recognizing and rewarding employees, but recognizing them, which doesn't have to cost anything, but can often be more meaningful than the reward itself.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think this was a good session. I mean, we kept a little bit shorter than usual, but I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm just no, but I'm excited about future topics, and please, for the audience there, please send us ideas for future conversations we can have to help you with leading change.
Yeah, I was thinking of one the other day, like sharing the data that matters. So not just checking the box and starting
Oh, I like that.
to make sure that what we're communicating is information that can become actionable and not just
Oh,
hot air.
I love it. I love it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, David, as always, I appreciate the time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and I'm looking forward to next time.
You too, sir. Take care.